Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Dee and this is On the Cutting Mat Studio. I design sewing patterns for women and today I will be showing you how to make this dress. The link for this pattern is in the description box below, so check out my Etsy channel if you're interested. If you've seen my Etsy shop, you'll know that all of my patterns are named after desserts, so if you have any ideas for future names, let me know. This one is called Raspberry Cream Dress and it is a beginner-friendly design for stretch fabrics. Excitingly, I am giving you a discount for 25% off when you purchase this pattern on my Etsy shop. Use the discount code RASPBERRY25 until midnight on the 3rd of March, UK time. You can make this dress with ruching on one side or both sides, with a mock neck or a bias tape finish, and you can pick between long and short sleeves as well. You will need at least 35% stretch on the fabric that you pick. You can find the fabric requirements below or on the pattern on my Etsy shop. This is a beginner-friendly pattern, so if you're interested, keep watching and learn how to do it. Let's get into the tutorial.
Print and assemble your pattern pieces, lay them on the fabric and cut them out. Make sure to follow the instruction booklet for the best layout. Grab the back pattern piece and lay it out in front of you with wrong side facing you. This is the wrong side of the fabric and this is the right side of the fabric. For some fabrics you can use both sides, but make sure that you remember which one you're using. For version B, it's important that this pattern piece is faced the right way. The notches will be needed when you're attaching the sleeve, so make sure that you're transferring them over from the pattern piece. Then we'll need to stabilize the shoulder to make sure it's not stretching out when you're wearing it. Grab a piece of stabilizing tape, clear elastic or a piece of ribbon and cut it to be roughly the size of your shoulder.
I'm using this fusible interfacing piece because I couldn't find a ribbon, but I usually would go for a ribbon or a clear tape.
You have to make sure that the inside edge of the stabilizing tape sits within the seam allowance, so less than 1.5 centimeter away from the edge of the fabric. Pin it in place and then repeat it on the other side. And then stitch. I like to leave a little tape hanging over at the edge because that will make it easier to handle it when sewing.
The stabilizing tape shouldn't overlap with your seam allowance because that could cause it to be bulky once you're sewing the two bodice pieces together. Okay, so go ahead and sew the stabilizing tape. And then repeat on the other shoulder.
Take your back bodice piece that you have just stabilized the shoulders on and lay it out flat in front of you with wrong sides facing up. Then fold the hem down by 2 centimeters. Then take your iron, give it a press and then pin in place.
Once you've pinned that in place, you can sew along about 1.5 centimeters away from the edge. Make sure that you're catching the hem.
Grab your front bodice, which has the deeper neckline, and pin it in place as well, just to make it easier when sewing. Lay it out flat so that the wrong side is facing you, mark the 2 centimeters and press. Then you can go ahead and pin it in place. I recommend top stitching from the right side of the fabric, but make sure to transfer the pins over to this side before you start sewing. Make sure not to pull on the fabric while you're sewing, otherwise you'll stretch it out.
Check on the other side if the whole hem has been caught, which it has, and I'm stitching with a zigzag line because that makes it keep its stretch. This is what it looks like from the front. And now we're going to repeat on the other body piece. Place the front bodice with right sides up in front of you. It's quite long, so it's not going to fit on camera.
the front bodice piece. You can tell because it has the bigger curve, the neckline. And now place your back bodice piece, which has the stabilizing tape on the shoulder, and lay it on top of it flat with right sides facing. Start pinning all the way down one side. If you're making version B, make sure that you're pinning the long edge first. It will make it easier to sew. Make sure that the bottom edges, the hem, lines up, and then continue pinning. Okay, go ahead and sew all the way along the side and make sure that you're using a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. This will be very important in a second. Okay, grab the piece you've just sewn. You can see this is the back, got the front. This is the seam that you've just sewn. I'm gonna have to go and press this seam open all the way from the top. Now, you're going to have to pin this seam that you've just pressed open to the front bodice here and the back bodice. So pin in place and make sure you're going through all the layers. Make sure not to pin it to your ironing board. Repeat on both sides. So you've pressed and pinned this seam, and now we're gonna go ahead and stitch it in place. Make sure you're close to the edge. Look, you can lower your stitch length if you feel that it's too wide. The tie will be 1 centimeter wide, so that it's gonna have to fit in there. So try and be in the 5 millimeters by the seam with the stitching. And remember that you're gonna see the stitching from the outside as well, but it's going to be with the ruching, so it's not going to be too obvious. Once again, try and make sure that you're not pulling on the fabric. You have to repeat it on the other edge as well. So as you can see, we've sewn down this side, and now we're gonna sew down this side. Make sure to check that you've caught both seams in. You're going to use these two as channels to put your ties through. So for both versions, you're going to have to now pin the other side closed as well. You'll notice that for version B, this other side is much shorter. That's because the dress is only ruched on one side. This is version A, as I said before, so let's just match up the sides and pin in place and repeat what we did on the other side. Stitch the side seam closed with a 1.5 centimeter seam. If you're making version B, which only has one side ruched, you can go ahead and finish this seam either with a zigzag stitch or an overlocker. If you're making version A, like I am, you're going to press the seam open, like so, and then stitch down both sides to create two channels. So now it's going to be a little tricky, but you're gonna have to sew down both sides like we did on the other side seam. Make sure that you're only sewing through one layer. If you're struggling to sew all the way down, you can backstitch, cut the thread, and then start again. It's a little bit of a struggle, so don't worry.
sewn down one edge, now you have to repeat it on the other one. Moving on to the tie. For version A, you will need to cut 4 tie pieces, and for version B, you will need 2. So here I have 4 because I'm making version A. As you can see, some of them have a seam. I didn't have enough fabric for a continuous length. So grab one of your tie pieces and then fold in one edge by 1 centimeter and then the other one by 1 centimeter as well. And now we're going to press it. You can also go ahead and press one side all the way down and then press the other side all the way down. When you've folded in both sides and pressed, fold it in half lengthwise and press. Pin the open edge closed. You can switch back to straight stitch when sewing the ties, as they don't need to be stretched that much. Take one of your tie pieces and sew down the open side. Okay, one is done. Now you only have to repeat it on the other however many pieces you have. So I have to do another 3 of them. So now you have to grab your main bodice and pull through all of these ties that you made through these channels. Grab a safety pin and one of the ties. And then starting at the bottom, pull it through. Once you pull it through, make sure there's a little tail and then pin it in place. You can now baste this bit down. Just make sure that you leave this other side open. So you can kind of see how it's going to look once it's done with all the ruching. But for now, I'm gonna pull it down a little bit. Grab your safety pin once again. Well, another piece of tie. To this one. Pin the safety pin to the tie at the top. Find the hem of the dress and once again pull this one through this channel that you made earlier. Okay, we've pulled it through. Take the safety pin off, leave a little tail and pin it in place. Go ahead and baste this in place so that the ties don't pull out while you're working on the rest of your dress. So if you've made version B and you've pulled the ties through, you're done with this step and you can move on to the shoulders and then the rest of it. However, if you're making version A, like me, you still have another side to go, so wish me luck. Place the dress in front of you and match up the shoulders. This is the back shoulder piece. You can see the stabilizing tape on it. Start at the edge, pin in place. You're going to want to switch back to a zigzag stitch while you're doing this, because this part will need to stretch. You can either trim the seam allowance and finish this seam with the zigzag stitch,
or you can use your serger to do it. Now that you've done it on one shoulder, go ahead and pin the other shoulder. Close this one. It's okay if this bit on the front bodice overlaps a little bit, because once you've sewn it, it will match up, so don't worry about it. Go ahead and sew it in place. Trim the seam allowance and finish it with a zigzag stitch or your overlocker. Once you've sewn the shoulders, press the seams either open, or if you finish them with an overlocker like I did, towards the back. I'm making the mock neck, but you can make the bias stave neck as well. Doesn't really matter for this step. Take your neckband and fold it in half widthwise, so the short edges are touching. Pin it in place and then stitch. It's important at this step to see if this fits over your head, so just go ahead and try it on. Try and see if your fabric is stretchy enough. You can press the seam open or finish it with an overlocker, which is what I've done. In that case, just press it to one side. Fold the neckband in half, wrong sides facing, so you're sealing the knife sides. I'm going to pin this seam in place and then go ahead and press this. Now we're going to add the neckband to the dress with the quartering method. So what you'll do is find the seam where you've attached the two ends together, then fold it in half, mark this seam, then fold it in half, match up the two pins, and then put a pin on the other two quarters. And now you have the 4 pins. Now to attach the neckband, find the center point on the back and the front bodice. Put a pin there. Find the center at the front as well and put a pin there. Now we'll do the same as we did with the neckband, so we're going to find the other 2 quarters, match up the pins, and then find the fold. Do the same on the other side, match up the pin, and find the fold. These are the points where we'll be adding the neckband and matching them up. Take your neckband. I like to put the part with the seam at the back so that it's out of the way, no one sees it. So match up this seam with the pin that you put at the back of the neck, if you can see. So match up this seam with the back, right sides facing, pin in place. Now match up the pin at the front center of the neckband with the front center of the dress. You can see. Then go ahead and match up the pins at the sides. So now that you've matched up all the pins, go ahead and pin around. You'll have to stretch the neckband a little bit to match the size of the neck hole. The neckband is a little smaller to make sure that it lies flat when you're wearing it. These are one of my favorite pins, by the way. They're very, very thin. They are easy to bend though, so I have to be careful. Now take this to your sewing machine and sew all the way around with the 1.5 centimeter seam allowance.
Starting at the back, I'm just going to go around. Try not to stretch your fabric when you're sewing, so don't pull it towards yourself too much, just enough so that the neckband lays flat. Okay, once you've finished sewing the neck in place, see if there's any issues, any bunching or anything. If not, go ahead and trim the seam allowance. Make sure you're only cutting the seam allowance. Don't cut into the fabric. If your fabric is bulky, you can grade the seam allowance, meaning you would cut the bodice bit a bit shorter, thinner than the neckband part, like so. However, this is quite a thin fabric, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim the whole thing to the same size. Now, press the seam down towards the bodice and we will stop stitch it in place from the outside. Turn your bodice to the right side. You can see the neckband. So we're going to be top stitching along this line, starting at the back seam of the neckband. On the outside of the fabric, top stitch it in place. This is why we pressed it towards the bodice. Grab your sleeve pieces. Make sure that you mark where the notches are. There should be one on the front, one in the middle, and one in the back. Lay one of your sleeves out flat, right sides facing you, and then fold it in half so that right sides are facing each other and pin it in place. I'm making the long sleeve, but if you're making the short sleeve version, this is the same method. You can trim the seam allowance and finish this with a zigzag stitch, and also you can go ahead and overlock the edges. Once you've done that, repeat the same steps on the other sleeve. Take your bodice piece and lay it out in front of you so that you can see the armhole here. Take your sleeve that you've just sewn and turn it right side out so that the right side is facing here. We're going to be inserting this sleeve into this armhole. How we know that this is the correct one? This one has 2 notches, this side has 2 notches. So we know that it's correct. Take your sleeve and pull it through into the armhole. Match the seam on the sleeve, the side seam of the dress or top, whichever you're making, like so. Match the notch at the top with the shoulder seam of the dress. So this is the shoulder seam, this is my notch. Once again, right sides facing, pin it in place. So you can see the sleeve is in the armhole. Match the notch on the front bodice with the notch on the front of the sleeve. You can tell this is the front because there's only one notch. Always pin on the sleeve side, which is where we'll be stitching. My old teacher always told me that it would be easier to control the sleeve if you're stitching it from the sleeve side. So once you've pinned the sleeve to the armhole, as you can see, stitch all around from the side seam back. Once you've stitched the seam to the bodice, you can trim the seam allowance and finish it with a zigzag stitch, or you can go ahead and overlock this edge. You've attached the sleeve. Now we have to press the seam allowance towards the bodice. Repeat this on the other side. So take your sleeve.
We're going to hem the sleeve now. Measure out 2 centimeters all across, fold in the hem, and pin in place.
So basically you folded the sleeve hem under to the inside with the wrong side facing so you can see the nice side. And now the tricky part will be sewing this. We will be stitching on the right side of the fabric. We'll be top stitching. Make sure you're sewing 1.5 centimeter away from the edge and pull away the rest of the sleeve so you're only sewing on one side.
Once you have sewn all around, trim the excess threads and repeat on the other sleeve.
Okay, so now that you're basically finished, grab your dress and turn it to the right side. You can pull on the ties to make the bodice shorter, or you can put the dress on and pull on them then. How you make this dress. I hope the tutorial was helpful. Let me know in the comments if you give it a try, and don't forget about the 25% off discount until midnight on the 3rd of March. Also, I'm very new to YouTube, so if you have any comments or feedback, do leave them down below and I will try to do better next time.